From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Here on the North Idaho College Public Forum, we find a subject that we've not covered before, and as we reach the midpoint of the 26th year of this particular program, we're in that situation today. I'm very pleased to have two guests to discuss something called the Apple School, which is part of Spokane School District 81's program. This particular Apple School is for grades 1 through 6, certain particular grades. And I'm so pleased that we have two guests to discuss how this program works and the involvement particularly of parents. I welcome to the program, first of all, Nancy Stowell, who is an area director in School District 81. Nancy, welcome to the program. You're kind to take time to come over to Coeur d'Alene and to our college and discuss the Apple School.
Thank you very much.
And I'm equally happy to have on the program Beth Calkins, who is both a parent and a teacher in the Apple School program. And Beth, welcome, and thank you for taking time to be here today.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
And if you don't mind, I would like to share with our viewers what you call the Apple philosophy, which is in your brochure. I think that's a good way to start the program before we get into specific questions. The brochure says that motivation to learn is heightened when children assume more responsibility for deciding what they need to know. Children must be respected as individuals. Learning how to learn is important. Parents have the right to be involved in the basic decision-making process of the school. We seek to integrate home, school, and responsible community participation. And I think that will really kick off our discussion. And as always, I'm very pleased to have a regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho. And Janelle will commence today's question on the subject, Apple Schools.
Nancy, my first question will be directed to you. What does Apple stand for?
Well, Apple is an acronym, and it stands for Alternative Parent Participation Learning Experience. And I always have to look because we always just refer to it as the Apple program.
And how many Apple programs are there?
In District 81, we have 3 schools that host the Apple program. They're located at Franklin, at Garfield, and at Logan Elementary. So they are regular elementary schools that host the Apple program within their school.
And in each one of those schools, how many classrooms are involved with Apple program?
We have 3 classrooms in each school. There would be a 1-2, a first, second grade classroom, a third, fourth grade classroom, and a fifth, sixth grade classroom.
Now, Beth, you are a teacher in some of those classrooms. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a brief overview of the number of students and some other general things about the Apple program?
Surely. The Apple program is very much like the regular program in District 81 in terms of curriculum and in terms of enrollment. We have standard class sizes. We have 24 to 27 children in each classroom, so about 75 children altogether at each Apple site. And the parent participation piece of Apple is a commitment to provide at least 90 hours of volunteer time to the program. That might be within the classroom, being involved with students or with materials preparation for teachers. It may involve working on committees or being part of the leadership program of the parent group.
And how long has the Apple program been in force in the Spokane School District?
Well, actually, I was just noticing this is our 20th year. The Apple program was initiated in 1977. A group of parents came together and petitioned the school board for the program, and so we're celebrating our 20th year. That's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. Let's proceed with the idea of whether this is unique to Spokane's School District 81, and I think I know the answer to this because we talked before the program, but Beth, I will start with you and tell us that there is similar programs that maybe they're identified somewhat different, but particularly in the state of Washington, but does it also go into other states?
There are programs very much like Apple in the state of Washington and in other states. Lots of programs that encourage or require parent participation in the classroom or, again, in organizational kind of work. Yes, all over the place.
And Nancy, as an administrator and working with this, do you visit each school, and also are you in contact with other school districts that are sharing ideas on future developments of this program?
Actually, my communication with other school districts has been pretty limited. I basically work with the 3 sites, and we work together on issues of enrollment and program. The sites are pretty independent, and although the Apple philosophy is certainly the same, how they implement that philosophy and some of their strategies and the way they work with parents is going to vary from school to school. So each identifies kind of themselves uniquely as a program. And so I get to know each program individually and then bring them together on occasion to work together at a district level over issues that are similar for all the programs.
You also indicated before the taping of this program that a number of parents at the end of the 6th grade and this particular program ends still want to be involved and do things, and so you have, I believe, a program that's similar. There's some carryover even to upper grades. Would you share what that's called and how that works?
Well, in grades 1 through 6 it is Apple, and you're right. Some parents thought, gee, we hate just kind of letting go of this idea, and we had some parents ask the school board to look at an alternative program at the middle school level, and for us in District 81 that's grades 7 and 8. And so we have a 7 and 8 program. It's called Sprint. It's housed at Shaw Middle School. And there, once again, parents are very actively involved in the education of their children. They work hand in hand with teachers on developing and implementing programs.
Beth, I want now to get into the heart of the Apple School and the Apple program.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends who are educators, and they have a lot of good things to say about what they do, but they also, from time to time, express concerns to me that there are a minority of the parents that do not become involved with the school and with their children. And they've indicated to me that they have more discipline problems and more learning problems when parents do not take a serious enough interest in their children and what's going on in the school. Now, that's not possible in the Apple School because, would you share, you indicated that during the academic year there's 90 hours that are given. When you multiply that by 24 or 27 students, there's someone there really often involved in some way. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is a philosophical one. Why is it so different and so significant that you who are trained professional educators can have parents on site, and what kind of difference does that make in the success of the education of the children?
Well, I think there's no question that whenever parents are interested and involved in their children's education, the message that the children get is that they are important people and that education is important to them as individuals. And there are a lot of parents who, for various reasons, have neither the time nor the resources to be in the classroom. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not supporting their children's education. Apple parents have made the choice to find a way to be involved in the classroom. And what it means for me as an educator is that I have an additional set of hands, an additional voice, an additional pair of eyes to support children through their learning. It means that Apple has an opportunity to provide additional enrichment opportunities, field trips, speakers, parents who are experts on things that they can bring into the classroom to share. And so the parent piece provides a broader educational experience for our children. And it also provides an opportunity for some one-on-one educational opportunities for children. I have my parents spend a lot of time doing individual reading conferences with first and second graders. And they have an opportunity to read with a child, to work on some strategies, to talk about their reading. And every time a child meets with a parent or any other individual who comes into the classroom, they're getting the message that their learning is important and is valued to the extent that people are willing to take the time to be there.
If I may be personal for a moment, I'm one of the 371 commissioners in the United States for what is called Education Commission of the States. It was created in the 60s by the governors, and each governor serves on that commission. And I received some data recently and some technology and some video that indicate that when you get not only the parents involved, but also the children involved, actually going out in the field and field trips. And I know in one of these videos where they gathered some data for biology, and they brought it back into the classroom and also used the computers with it, that there was a tremendous escalation in curiosity and interest of the children. Do you experience the same kind of thing when you and the parents take children on trips, field trips and all, and how do you implement that in some way that's different from the traditional classroom?
Well, we're very fortunate in that we have a whole room full of drivers. And that's the biggest difference, quite frankly. In the regular program, it's often difficult to have enough parents to transport, and that means relying on school buses to take field trips. Sometimes that's not possible because of cost or distance. There are lots of issues that are involved in that. So the bottom line, first off, is that we have lots of people with cars that can transport children.
Makes you more flexible.
It makes us a lot more flexible, a lot more flexible. It also means, again, that we have smaller groups of children with an adult working on a field trip. We're just finishing a science unit in my class on geology, rocks and minerals, pebbles, sand, and silt. And we took an all-apple field trip a couple of weeks ago to Steptoe Butte. My children were fascinated and came home with pockets full of Steptoe Butte. I think it's probably 10 feet lower than it was a week ago.
So you created
as a
much
result.
curiosity.
That's right, yeah.
Nancy, you, that's an outside, or that is outside the classroom, and you go and visit and observe. Would you compare and contrast for me what you see there compared with other classes, and what you see as the advantage to what Beth has just described in the learning process?
Well, I think as I look in on an Apple classroom, there always is a lot of activity. That's one of the things I notice. And because there are the adults in the classroom, you'll see lots of groups of children around an adult or with each other working on projects. Much of the learning is project-based. That's kids exploring their own learning. And so you'll see an awful lot of activity in an Apple classroom. You also see the kids having the opportunity to get outside the classroom, much more so than our regular classrooms. And as Beth said, we have the field trips. We have groups of parents who take small groups of children away from the school to do activities on a pretty regular basis. And I think whenever we can extend that learning outside the classroom, it's more meaningful for children. They can connect it to their real world. And I think that's a very valuable experience that Apple can provide its children that we can't always provide in the regular classroom.
One other question, and I'll go back to Janelle, that you triggered my thinking. We see a lot of studies that there's a very important relationship between the ratio of number of students in classrooms, classroom size, and learning process. It's often been said that no class should have more than 17 children at that age. But because you have to have more than that for certain financial reasons, aren't you breaking the class down in smaller size by having these additional assistants and it's more one-on-one? Would you agree with that concept for the Apple School?
It is definitely a benefit to have the adults in the classroom working with kids. And what's more important, I think, is that the adults are working with the teacher. So their work with children then is very purposeful. They know what the teacher is, what objectives the teacher is working on. So they know how to help the students. And so they're really partners. Throughout the district, we encourage our parents and community members to volunteer in classrooms and to do that kind of work that Apple just kind of naturally is very much a part of their program. We encourage that outside of the Apple program because we think what you said is very important, is we reduce that student-to-teacher ratio by bringing more adults into the classroom so that we can do more one-on-one work with students and small group work. That's how they learn best.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
I'm very encouraged to hear you say that there is lots of room for volunteering, and I know a lot of our viewers who are out there, regardless of whether they're in the Spokane School District or whether they're in other school districts, are interested in being involved in their children's educational process. One of the things that I would like to have you compare, and this question is really for either of you, is the homeschooling experience. There are a growing number of homeschoolers, if we read the statistics, a growing number of homeschoolers. You've indicated how your program compares with a more traditional classroom. How does the homeschooling situation compare, or that experience compare with your experience?
Well, I think homeschooling parents certainly want to be connected with their children, and that's one of the reasons they choose to keep them at home or to form a cooperative where they can be close to their kids. And that obviously is very much the philosophy of the Apple program. Parents developed that program because they saw themselves as their children's first teacher and their primary teacher and wanted to continue that relationship and that experience. Probably a major difference, however, for us is that in the Apple program, that program does follow district curriculum. So the students take all the assessments that the children in the regular program would take, and they follow the unit that Beth just described. The science unit is a module that all the children in the primary grades will receive across the district. So they follow the district curriculum. They have lots of flexibility in how they do that. But they are guided by that. And so homeschooling, of course, they decide their own curriculum pretty much. In District 81, we've invited homeschoolers to come back to the district through our technology center at Libby, and we now have some homeschoolers participating there. So we're always trying to connect, and Apple is a way that people who are interested in staying connected with their kids in education can stay involved.
Now, Beth, you're a classroom teacher, and you're right there. Would you share with us and our viewers and with Tony and I one of your stories that is just neat about how things go on in your Apple classroom?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to share two.
Okay, that would be great.
They both happened very recently, and I'm just so thrilled when things like this happen. I firmly believe that the best teachers are people who are passionate about something. And parents have their own passions, joys, hobbies, things that they really love. And I encourage them to bring those into the classroom and share. This year I have a father who plays the guitar and loves to sing. And every Wednesday, Craig comes in and sings for half an hour with my children. Now they have a very fine music program that they attend on a regular basis. This is just in addition. And the joy that I see on the faces of those children and on the face of that dad is enough to start my day off with a huge smile. When I spoke to him this morning before we started singing, he said, you know, one of the reasons that I do this is because it gives me an opportunity to step outside all of my adult stuff and go back to being a kid for a little while. And I feel regenerated and rejuvenated when I leave the classroom too. So we have a wonderful time with those kinds of things where parents bring in things that give them joy and share that with children. We do a little bit of fundraising at Apple. We try to provide additional enrichment opportunities for children without asking for an additional financial burden from parents. So as a group, we do fundraising to provide additional materials or scholarships to attend certain activities. And we ask that the children be involved in that. They need to understand that they're part of this program too, that we are all partners in this. This year for our Apple auction, I had a parent who created a beautiful puppet theater. And my children, all 24 of them, each created a puppet to go in the theater that was auctioned off at our Apple auction. And the pride that I saw in their faces as they worked with parents outside my classroom one-on-one to create aliens and dogs and cats and little girls and sew the puppet bodies with moms who love to sew and paint the puppet bodies with parents who are artistic was really wonderful.
It's going to be hard to ask another question. That's exactly the kind of thing which is so wonderful for kids, and those memories they take away from school are just great. The Apple program, does it have anything to do with computers, Nancy?
Well, as a district, we are committed to training our children to use computers to support learning, to access technology in a variety of ways. And so the Apple program has that same access to technology that any of our elementary classrooms would have. What they may have are some parents who are a little more computer literate, who may be in the classroom able to help kids, although we find that kids catch on pretty quickly, and they're often teaching us. So within the district, we do have a program and need certainly to continue to focus on the development of those skills with all of our kids.
But this is certainly nothing to do with a computer company of the same name.
Right, that's true.
It is a local program. Suppose that I wanted to make an application as a parent. How would I go about finding out more about this, and then how would I go about actually making the application? And I'm assuming that you have more applicants than you can take students, And so how do you determine who's going to go into that classroom?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question, because coming up in January, at the end of January, January 27th and January 29th, are 2 evenings that we will have an open house for any parents who are interested in the Apple program in the community. And part of the requirement of being considered for Apple is you have to attend one of those open houses. So those are on January 27th and 29th at 7 o'clock p.m. in the boardrooms.
I have to interject to say that this program won't air until after that. But anyway, it's good for you to know that they do this once a year, do you?
They do. Yes. And then because we have more students than we can accommodate, we do a lottery draw so that it's completely fair. We do guarantee places, however, for siblings in a family. So if you already have one child in Apple, we will accept the sibling into the program because, once again, we value the family and their role in the Apple program.
Now, Beth, are the students that are selected then pretty much a cross-section of students in any other classroom?
Yes, they are. There are no entry requirements of any sort other than that parents make it a thoughtful choice. In addition to attending the open house to get information about all 3 programs, the parents are then required to visit the Apple sites that they're interested in attending, observe in the classroom, take a look at what Apple looks like so that they can really make a thoughtful choice for their children.
I have a question that I warned you that I would ask Beth before the program. I, again, was impressed with the philosophy of the Apple School. I noticed, but in your comments in the brochure as a group, that you want to involve the children, and I read that to mean in the decision-making process. So my question was a friendly question, but when a kid's in the 1st grade and is very young, they're not yet at the sophistication of dealing with curriculum and what you would offer. So what do you mean by the concept that involving the children in the educational decision process, like you would the parents and the board and the educators, and how you set up an entire program?
That's actually a very timely question because we're in the middle of that process right now. This is conference week for School District 81, and all parents are meeting with teachers to talk about their students. In Apple, and in all 3 of our Apple programs, we believe that conferences should no longer be parent-teacher conferences, but parent-teacher-student conferences. And this first conference time, we spend setting goals. And the children and the parents are encouraged through a meeting at school about a week before conference time to begin to think about learning goals for each individual student. When the student and the parent come to conference time, we sit down together and talk about what goals would be realistic, what goals would be achievable, and how we go about achieving those goals and celebrating the fact that we have moved forward. And believe me, even 1st graders are very capable of looking at academic areas and also study skills and social areas, and setting goals for themselves that are very realistic and very attainable and really make very good sense for them as learners. So that's where we bring the smallest children in. And in fact, all Apple students go through that whole goal-setting process, and then we revisit those goals over the course of the year, touch base to see how we're doing on working toward those, see if they're still realistic, begin to reassess, and it's a wonderful process for students to take responsibility for their own learning and to be able to start establishing an understanding of how they have some direction in the learning that they go through.
I would assume, as you're experimenting with this new approach, that if a child stays in the Apple program all the way through, up to the 6th grade, that each year both the student and the parent and you in education would develop even in more detail this process, that become more experienced in what would happen. Is that be correct?
Yes, absolutely. By the time these children are in 5th and 6th grade, they have a very clear understanding of what the process is, and they also have a pretty good understanding of where they are as learners and where they'd like to see themselves as learners.
And Nancy, as an administrator, what's the role of moving this on through the different channels and to the board and being confirmed in a policy?
Well, the role that the students play in goal setting has always been a part of the Apple program. In fact, its early development called for that kind of involvement. So when the board accepted the Apple program, it accepted that children would be actively involved in things like goal setting, in working with the teachers and the parents to make decisions about activities that would go on in the classroom. So that's been confirmed. That was confirmed early on when the program was accepted as a viable program in the school district.
Each parent commits themselves to 90 hours of volunteer time. However, as I understand it, some parents may actually give more than the 90 hours. Can you give some examples of how parents might arrange their time so that they can participate in the Apple program?
You probably have the best idea because they are in your classroom on a regular basis, but we also have parents in our Apple program who work. And so we have to make sure that there are opportunities for those parents who can't always get away during the school day, although many employers, interestingly enough, as soon as a parent goes to them and says, I have this opportunity, have been incredibly flexible. I've been amazed
I've been very pleased.
at the support from the business community. But there are other ways as well. They work on newsletters, they work in the fundraisers, they serve on the executive board for Apple. Each Apple program has its own parent group that forms in addition to the one that the school has, so they get credit for doing those kinds of things. Coming into the school to do presentations like your father who plays the guitar. All of that is an opportunity to claim hours. We do a big field trip once a year away on a weekend, and that's another opportunity. Preparing materials for the school would be another opportunity. And what kinds of things do you see, Beth?
Well, one of the things that I really would like to emphasize, because I'm very pleased to see it continuing to grow, is employers who are very supportive. I have two parents who recently changed jobs, and for the first time were very proactive and went in as they were interviewing for the position and said,
I'm going to have to interrupt. I wish we could continue on. I have the word that we're out of time. On behalf of Janelle Burke, our panel member, and our staff, we thank both Nancy Stowell and Beth Calkins for being with us to talk about the Apple School, and which is in the Spokane School District 81. We congratulate you. We think that you're doing a really remarkable job, and thank you for taking time to share with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time when we will discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.